What if I told you there was a superpower that lets you literally see the world through electricity? No, this isn't science fiction. It's a real biological sixth sense called electroreception. And today, we're going to break down just how incredible it is. Okay, just picture this. You're deep underwater. It's so murky you can't see your hand in front of your face. Sound is just this muffled, confusing echo. For us, that's a pretty terrifying place to be. But for millions of creatures, that's just home. So how on earth do they navigate, hunt, and survive when all the senses we rely on are completely useless? Well, here's how. They use electroreception. It's the ability to perceive the incredibly faint electrical signals that all living things give off. Every time a muscle twitches, every single heartbeat, it creates this tiny electric field, and these animals have evolved to sense it, basically creating this vivid, three-dimensional picture of their world without ever using their eyes. So you might be wondering, why don't land animals like lions or eagles have this amazing sixth sense? Well, the answer really just comes down to physics. This superpower is almost exclusively found in aquatic life for one simple reason. Water is a fantastic conductor of electricity. It lets those tiny signals travel. Air, on the other hand, is a terrible conductor, which means on land, this sense would be totally useless.
But it gets even more interesting. Not all electroreception works the same way. It really comes in two main flavors. There's a passive version, and then there's a much more dynamic, active version.
So passive electroreception. You can think of it like being a spy. You're just listening in, totally silent, detecting the electric fields that other animals naturally give off. It's all about pinpointing their location. But active electroreception, that's more like sonar. These animals have special organs to generate their own electric field. Then they sense any distortions in that field to navigate, to communicate, and even to find a mate. And this electric sense is so much more than just a navigation tool. It's absolutely critical for communication and survival. And some of the ways these animals use it are just brilliant. From solving signal jams to hiding from predators before they're even born. So imagine two of these active electric fish, the ones that send out their own signals, meet up. If they happen to be broadcasting on the same electric frequency, it's basically like two people trying to talk over each other on the same radio channel. It's just static. Their senses get jammed and suddenly they can't see a thing.
So what do? Well, in their own way, they pretty much tell each other to get off my frequency. It's a real behavior, and it's called the jamming avoidance response. And it is a stunningly elegant solution to this problem.
The second they detect this jamming, each fish instantly, and I mean instantly, shifts its electric discharge up or down to a totally new frequency. Just like that, in a fraction of a second, the conflict is resolved, the airwaves are clear, and both of them can see again. It's amazing.
Okay, so that's a clever communication trick for sure. But what about pure life-or-death survival? Well, this sense is so finely tuned that it can be used for self-defense before an animal even takes its first breath. Get ready for this, because this is incredible. A tiny ray embryo still inside its egg case has to pump its tail back and forth just to breathe. But that little movement creates a tiny electric signal, basically a beacon for predators. So if it detects the unique electric field of a shark's gills breathing nearby, it freezes instantly. It just stops all movement, goes electrically silent, and becomes completely invisible to the hunter.
And speaking of sharks, let's dive into the animal that's probably most famous for using this sense, because this is where electroreception goes from a clever tool to a ruthlessly efficient weapon.
A shark's hunt is just a masterclass in using all your senses. It starts with that legendary sense of smell, right? Detecting prey from way, way off. But as it closes in for the kill, it switches over to its electric sense. This lets it home in on the faint electrical pulses of its prey's heartbeat and muscles for that final, precise strike. It then rolls its eyes back for protection and lunges. Just think about that for a second. In those final, critical moments of an attack, the shark isn't even using its eyes. It is, for all intents and purposes, blind. It's seeing entirely with electricity, which allows for a perfectly accurate strike even if the prey is buried under the sand. So this brings up the big question, right? What about us? What about humans? Well, it turns out most shark attacks are actually a case of mistaken identity. See, a shark's electric sense can tell it exactly where something is, but not what it will taste like. And we just aren't on their preferred menu. So they often do what some scientists call a try before you buy bite.
They'll take one, maybe two bites to figure out what they've got, and they very quickly realize that our lean, stringy muscle is nowhere near as tasty as a soft, fatty seal.
But here's where that test bite can become much, much more dangerous. If the person starts to bleed, the salt in our blood acts as an amazing electrical conductor. It dramatically amplifies that person's electric field. And to a shark, that sudden amplified signal can unfortunately trigger a full-on feeding frenzy.
But the cool thing is, this knowledge isn't just sitting in a textbook. By understanding this electric sense, scientists are actually developing artificial electrical fields that are designed to overwhelm and disorient sharks, repelling them from beaches and hopefully making the water safer for everyone.
So we know a ton about this incredible sense, but it is still very much an unseen frontier. There are some really big questions that scientists are still racing to answer.
For one, we still don't fully get how their brains take these raw electrical signals and turn them into a coherent 3D picture of the world. But maybe the most mind-bending mystery has to do with migration. There's a leading theory that as salt water flows through the Earth's magnetic field, it generates these super weak electric currents. And some researchers think sharks might be using these currents as a kind of natural, planet-wide GPS to navigate across thousands of miles of open ocean.
Electroreception really gives us this profound glimpse into a sensory world that's completely alien to our own. It really makes you stop and wonder what other hidden senses are out there, shaping the world right under our noses in ways we can't even begin to imagine.